The Foreigner begins with a scene set in the bustling city of London, England, where Ngoc Minh Quan, portrayed by Jackie Chan, is introduced as a quiet, unassuming man. A Vietnam War veteran, Quan now leads a simple life, focusing on his greatest treasure, his daughter Phan, played by Katie Leung. The deep bond between father and daughter is evident as Quan lovingly picks Phan up from school, a routine that brings him a sense of joy and peace amidst the chaos of the city. On this particular day, Quan decides to take Phan to a Knightsbridge dress boutique, hoping to find something special for her. As they arrive in the busy shopping district, the streets are alive with activity. Quan maneuvers his car carefully, searching for a parking spot. However, as he attempts to park, a motorcycle rider draws his attention. The rider, seemingly just another part of the city's bustling rhythm, closely follows Quan's movements, positioning himself suspiciously between the nearby clothing store and a bank. In a moment of unfortunate timing, Quan accidentally bumps into another car as he tries to secure a parking spot. The minor collision draws the ire of the other driver, who steps out to confront Quan. But before the situation can escalate, the unthinkable happens. A massive explosion erupts, tearing through the bank and the fashion store with devastating force. The motorcycle, rigged with a bomb, is the source of the blast. The scene is one of utter chaos and destruction. Quan is thrown to the ground by the sheer force of the explosion, stunned and disoriented. In the aftermath, he frantically searches for Phan, but his worst fears are soon realized. The blast has claimed the life of his beloved daughter, along with 11 others. The carnage leaves 36 more injured, as the once lively street is reduced to a scene of horror and devastation. In that heartbreaking moment, Quan's world is shattered. The grief and shock on his face speak volumes as he stands amidst the wreckage, holding on to the last fragments of the life he once knew. This tragic event sets the stage for the relentless pursuit of justice that will follow as Quan, fueled by his profound loss, embarks on a quest to find those responsible for the bombing. The story intensifies as a group calling themselves the Authentic IRA claims responsibility for the devastating explosion. They contact a local news station, taking credit for the attack that has left the city of London reeling. The declaration sends shockwaves through the station, prompting the chief to order his team to dig deeper to uncover whether other terrorist groups might also be involved in this heinous act. The newsroom buzzes with urgency as reporters scramble to gather more evidence, the weight of the tragedy pressing down on everyone. Meanwhile, the bombing scene becomes a hub of activity as emergency responders and investigators work tirelessly amidst the rubble. Among those drawn to the site is Ian Wood, a photographer portrayed by Rufus Jones, who arrives to capture the aftermath of the explosion. As he navigates through the chaos, Ian enters the shattered remains of the boutique where the bomb detonated. There, he encounters a scene that stops him in his tracks. Quan, overcome with grief, is cradling the lifeless body of his daughter, Phan. The raw emotion on Quan's face, the depth of his sorrow, is palpable. Ian, momentarily paralyzed by the sight, instinctively lowers his camera, recognizing that this is a moment of unimaginable personal loss, not just a news story. Elsewhere, in a safe house hidden away from prying eyes, 3 members of the Authentic IRA watch the news coverage of the explosion. They are a mix of emotions, pride, fear, and anxiety, as they observe the chaos they have unleashed. Yet, despite their bold claim, they understand the gravity of their situation. Knowing that the authorities will stop at nothing to track them down, the group decides to stay hidden, aware that any misstep could lead to their capture. As they struggle with their actions and realize the hunt has begun, tension is high. Pierce Brosnan's character, Liam Hennessy, an Irish deputy minister with a complicated past, is caught in a web of political intrigue and personal betrayal. Hennessy is having an affair with Maggie Dunn, played by Charlie Murphy, and the fallout from the bombing only adds to the tension in his life. The morning after the explosion, Liam Hennessy receives a call from his wife, Mary, portrayed by Orla Brady. Her voice carries a mix of concern and confusion. Hennessy hadn't come home the previous night, and she is left wondering about his whereabouts. The unspoken tension between them hints at the strain their marriage is under, exacerbated by Hennessy's secrets. As the news of the bombing spreads, Hennessy immediately shifts into crisis mode. He meets with Catherine Davies, a British politician played by Leah Williams, to discuss the repercussions of the attack. The conversation is tense, as both are acutely aware of the political fallout and the need to control the narrative. Hennessy's concern is not just with the British response, but also with the potential implications for Irish politics. He reaches out to other Irish lawmakers and former IRA members, demanding answers. He is curious to know who is using Semtex and causing civilian casualties. The bombing has stirred up old ghosts, and Hennessy is desperate to maintain control, both politically and personally. Meanwhile, Ngoc Minh Quan is a man consumed by grief after losing his daughter in the explosion. The tragedy has left him utterly inconsolable, a shell of the man he once was. Quan's home, located above his small restaurant, becomes a place of mourning. 2 investigators visit him there, offering hollow reassurances that the bombers will be caught and brought to justice, but their words do little to ease Quan's pain. The loss he has suffered is too great, and the desire for vengeance begins to take root in his heart. Quan's longtime friend and co-worker Lam, played by Tao Lu, senses the growing darkness within him. Lam pleads with Quan not to go down the path of revenge, reminding him that it will only bring more pain. But Quan is beyond reason. The need for retribution, for some sense of justice, is overwhelming. Ignoring Lam's heartfelt pleas, Quan makes the difficult decision to leave behind everything he knows, including his friend. The man who once sought only peace now embarks on a dangerous journey, driven by the relentless pursuit of those responsible for his daughter's death. The story delves deeper into Quan's tragic past, adding layers to his character and explaining the profound grief that drives him. Desperate for answers and willing to do whatever it takes to find those responsible for the bombing, Quan arranges a meeting with Commander Bromley, portrayed by Ray Fearon, a high-ranking officer in Scotland Yard. The scene is tense, charged with the weight of Quan's desperation. Quan, clutching onto the only hope he has left, offers Bromley all the money he has in exchange for the identities of the bombers. His voice is steady, but the anguish behind his words is palpable. This is a man who has lost everything and is willing to sacrifice whatever remains if it means avenging his daughter's death. Bromley, however, is unmoved by the offer. He refuses the bribe, explaining to Quan that the investigation is still in its early stages and that they lack the necessary information to identify the perpetrators. Bromley's refusal isn't cold, it's pragmatic. He knows the investigation must follow its course, but Quan's desperation touches him, even as he remains firm. During their conversation, a piece of Quan's tragic past is revealed, shedding light on the depth of his sorrow and his relentless pursuit of justice. Bromley learns that Fan was not Quan's only child. Years earlier, Quan had 2 other daughters who perished in a brutal raid by Thai pirates as they were en route to a refugee camp in Singapore. The revelation is heartbreaking. Quan has already endured the unimaginable loss of his first 2 daughters, only to lose his last remaining child in this senseless bombing. The weight of his grief is almost unbearable, and it's clear that this latest tragedy has pushed Quan to a breaking point. This backstory explains the intensity of Quan's actions and his unwillingness to let this tragedy go unanswered. He is not just seeking justice for Fan. He is a father who has lost all of his children, and he is determined to make sure those responsible for his pain are held accountable. As Bromley listens to Quan's story, it's clear that while the commander may not have the answers Quan seeks, he now fully understands the depth of the man's resolve. Quan leaves the meeting with no new information, but his determination is stronger than ever, setting the stage for the relentless pursuit that will follow. In order to meet with Hennessy, Quinn travels to Belfast. 2 security personnel remove Quan from the premises after discovering a Swiss Army knife on him. His secretary had already rejected him. After meeting with Quan, Hennessy orders them to release him. In reference to Hennessy's past as an IRA commander, Quan shows a newspaper article in which the man expresses his pride in his IRA heritage. In response to Quan's demands that he identify and apprehend the bombers, Hennessy has claimed ignorance of their identities. Quan departs from the office of Hennessy. He constructs a homemade bomb out of matches, cigarettes, and 2 Coke bottles in an adjacent restroom. The explosion unsettles everyone on the building level, but thankfully, no one is injured. Coldly demanding the identities of the bombers, Quan contacts Hennessy. Who are they? Hennessy insists he has no idea. From his home in New York, Hennessy summons his nephew Sean Morrison, played by Roy Fleck Brine, and asks him to come to London to assist in identifying the bombers. In Quan's leased apartment, 4 IRA goons belonging to Hennessy break in. Defeating their assault, Quan manages to flee. While Hennessy is kissing Maggie at a restaurant, Quan secretly records the moment. He then sends Henry a copy of the photo via text message. After Henry leaves his rural house, Quan, who is hiding in the woods, blows up a stable. While Mary is alone, Morrison pays her a visit. Mary is Hennessy's wife. Morrison is stopped during their sexual encounter by Bromley, an old colleague from his time in the British Army, who wants to deal with Hennessy in exchange for information on the bombers' names. Morrison hears Mary's story of her animosity toward her husband, Hennessy, which she attributes to his refusal to seek retribution for her brother's murder 6 years ago. Outside the country home, Quan detonates another device, and the minions of Hennessy pursue him into the woods. One of the guys shoots Quan in the shoulder, causing him to flee, but they still fall prey to Quan's traps. A heated knife is used by Quan to cauterize the wound later on. As he blacks out from agony, a memory from his past comes flooding back. The day Thai pirates attacked the boat he and his family were on their way to a refugee camp in Singapore, trying to escape Vietnam. His 2 little kids were abducted and brutally murdered, despite his efforts to defend them. Shots injured him and his wife. Maggie boards the motorcycle belonging to the bomber who struck Knightsbridge during her stay in London. In a tragic explosion on a bridge, 16 innocent citizens have lost their lives. Following the bombing of the bus, Hennessy meets with his accomplice, Hugh McGrath, played by Dermot Crowley. He is frustrated and wants to know who is responsible for these explosions. After realizing the ineffectiveness of his initial plan to attack numerous financial targets with the aim of securing pardons for 5 jailed members and gaining political favor, Henry intensified his efforts, as reported by McGrath. Hennessy shoots McGrath in the leg to silence him. It is revealed to Hennessy by McGrath that his lover Maggie Dean, whose actual name is Sarah McKay, was also employed by McGrath. In retaliation for her husband's failure to assassinate her brother's killers, Hennessy discovers that Mary, his wife, had aided McGrath. Killed by Hennessy is McGrath. Morrison follows Quan into the woods to a bush shelter, but Quan surprises him there. They engage in combat until Morrison is subdued by Quan, who uses a lethal stick to halt him. After he binds Morrison up, Morrison hands Quan the identities of the 5 bombers, including Patrick O'Reilly, Niall McNamee, who was responsible for Fan's death. He provides Quan with information about the potential discovery of a burn mark on O'Reilly's hand. The bomb that murdered Morrison's family was also detonated by O'Reilly. After Maggie seduces reporter Ian Wood in a tavern, the two have sexual relations. He is scheduled to go on the same plane as all the other VIPs. His laptop gets bombed by Maggie when he's in the restroom. Discovering the bomber's lair, Quan disguises himself as a gas technician and gains access. For all 5, he battles. He kills 3 bombers in all, after shooting 2 of them and breaking a TV in the third's face. Maggie has a shoulder injury. He confronts O'Reilly and uses a curtain to strangle him. Quan leaves the room as the police enter. In order to find the third explosive, they question Maggie. The cops use electrical products to torment Maggie after she insults them. Police find Ian, who is an unknowing mule about to board a plane at the airport, seize his laptop, and then destroy it by throwing it down a jetway. After receiving orders to leave no stone unturned, the cops executed Maggie. Hennessy, upon discovering his wife's treason, gives Morrison the order to have Mary executed as retribution for her and his own betrayal. Morrison goes back to Big Apple. Davies, who was a passenger on the plane Maggie planned to crash land, calls Hennessy. Before disclosing that Bromley has proof that Hennessy was having an affair with Maggie, Davies expresses her gratitude to Hennessy for saving her life. From this point on, Davies assures Hennessy she owns him. This is the last time Quan will be visiting Hennessy. He implicates him with the terrorist acts by showing him a photo he took of himself kissing Maggie at the restaurant. Hennessy apologizes and claims he had no intention of murdering his daughter or the others who lost their lives. Hennessy is coerced into clicking send by Quan, who wants the photo to become viral and expose his guilt and involvement. Once again, Quan is back at his restaurant. Under Bromley's instructions, an agent keeps tabs on him. Bromley tells him to let him be when he asks whether he should move in with Quan. Lamb later finds Quan and embraces and kisses him. If you enjoy the video, please subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments section. The next movie I will recap for you.